Despite all the issues with the college football season in 2020, find me a team that improved as much as the Arkansas Razorbacks. And actually, it's not even indicative in that 3-7 record. We got Ty Hudson on the line from Pig Trail Network to help us break down the Hogs. And of course, Arkansas is in camp right now. Ty, how you doing?
Yo, Mark, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Hogs in camp. We're about 3 weeks away from football.
Yep.
And we're going to run everyone through the offense and the defense. And let's get started. So I'm also guessing that there's not a team in America, Ty, that had two guys total over 100 tackles in a short season. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, bumper pull, Grant Morgan. I would argue on the surface, probably one of the more talented teams in the SEC on the surface. Depth is a completely different issue, but one of the more talented teams at that position at linebacker between those two, between Bumper Morgan and Grant Morgan, or Bumper Pull and Grant Morgan.
So as you take us through the defense, I know that there were some issues last year all over the place, but hit us up with the strengths and weaknesses with 9 starters coming back.
Yeah, loaded with experience, Mark. Holy cow. I mean, you're looking at a roster with, what, 22, 23 seniors, 11 super seniors split up on both sides of the ball, and you like, again, on the surface, what Arkansas has to offer. So when you look at, I'll just break it down with the secondary first. When you look at what's going on, you've got to feel pretty excited if you're a Razorback fan about the secondary. And I can't say the last time I've been this hyped about the expectations from the secondary. And it starts with, without a doubt, Jalen Catalon, who just absolutely lowers the boom. I mean, that guy is a monster. He's all over the field. He hits like he's 6'4", 260. I mean, he hits with the amount of tonnage as like I don't know, like a truck, like a big diesel truck. He just lays the boom, man. You wouldn't think that looking at his size, although he's beefed up quite a bit throughout the offseason. Highly recruited player Texas wanted badly out of high school, and Arkansas managed to swoop him up a couple years back. He's a big part of what happened last year. You could see a difference when he wasn't on the field. You know, you knew something like, oh boy, we might be in for it a little bit because we don't have Catalon on the field. Then, you know what, not far behind him, kind of rotating around the safeties, you've got guys like Simeon Blair, Miles Slusher. We forget about Slusher, a true freshman who last year had a little bit of an impact. You go back, he had I think his first game he played in, as a matter of fact, I want to say it was Georgia, where he had a few tackles and a forced fumble and a fumble recovery in his first game, in his debut game as a true freshman. At the corner spots, it gets a little dicey behind Monteric Brown, who I think is an all-conference caliber type of corner. Not saying he's a first-team or even a second-team all-conference guy, but he's certainly someone who I think belongs in the conversation. We know, like I mentioned, Jalen Catalon, that's all-American. I think that's his level. Monteric Brown, probably more of an all-conference caliber guy. But again, behind him, you don't really know what they've got, because Hudson Clark, who is a lengthy 6'2.5", 6'3" corner, not known for speed, and there seems to be a little bit of a battle there between him and Ladarius Bishop, who's, I think, arguably one of the fastest players on the team, really athletic, a little bit smaller in frame by a couple of inches, but can play man and zone, whereas Hudson Clark is a little bit more limited to just zone coverage, and even at times he was exploited, but he was a freshman walk-on last year. So the secondary is, I would argue, going to be an area where you see the most improvement from Sam Pittman year 1, or Barry Odom year 1 to Barry Odom year 2 on defense. I like the battles that are going on there. Monteric Brown, there's no argument about, he's clearly the guy. But again, safeties and corners are kind of, you've got some battles going on there in the secondary. We already talked about the linebackers a little bit. Grant Morgan and Bumper Pool, definitely your again, 2 all-conference caliber guys. Morgan, all-American caliber. I could not believe the production we got out of him in 2020, playing with that wrapped up arm the entire year. We found out, we didn't know this until I think last week, we found out the bumper pool played 80% of the season, 75% of the season with broken ribs. Mark, he had 20 tackles against Mississippi State in the game that he broke his ribs in. 20 tackles, and played the rest of the year trying to battle through that injury. He even said it himself. He never felt like he was 100% at any point. Obviously, right? My God, you broke your ribs. Holy crap. I complain if I stub my toe, Mark.
I know.
I can't
I'd be
walk.
about 3% with broken ribs.
I didn't know that. That blew my mind when I heard that. I can't imagine.
Yeah, I'd be about 3% for cooking dinner.
That's right. I'm in bed driving my wife crazy at that point. Like, I couldn't I don't think I could. The quality of life there drops for me quite significantly, Mark. Broken ribs. He's just tough. Both these guys, Grant Morgan and Poole, are so tough, man. And so they're 100%. They're healthy. The secondary healthy. We don't have any major injuries yet. We still got to get through fall camp. We still got a couple more, at least a little more than 2 weeks left of fall camp. And then you start your install week, getting ready for Rice week 1. Moving to the defensive line, I was pretty blunt on my show yesterday. I had a live show doing this very thing, breaking down the depth chart. I'm not very excited about what's going on up there. I'm just not. If you look at the rotation, the fact that you've got you have walk-ons, not walk-ons, transfers who are already talked about as possible starters. John Ridgway, Markel Utsi, Trey Williams. These are all 3 transfers, 2 of them from Mizzou. I get it. They played under Odom. There's some, they're familiar with this system and what he wants to do. Arkansas wants to run a 4-front this year. Last year was a lot of 3 and a little bit of multiple defense, the front 7, some multiple packages there. This year, it sounds like they want to run more of a 4-2, front 6, front 7. So they want to rush 4 off the line of scrimmage. And we're talking about Ridgway, Utsi, and the other transfer whose name is slipping my mind right now, but Ridgway. We're talking about transfers that are probably going to start or they're going to be in rotation. That tells you everything you need to know about this defensive line. They're just, I don't know. I'm not real psyched about it. I don't want to be too negative on them. I have expectations, some high expectations from guys up front. Isaiah Nichols, who's gained some weight over the offseason. I'm excited a little bit about the Eric Gregory, Zach Williams battle that you have going on at the right end spot. I think their ceiling, I'm not going to say it's high, but it's definitely higher than what they were able to achieve last year. So overall, the defense is in good shape. I think they're going to be better, but now you go from a 10-game only conference schedule where you don't have an off week. This year, you're going to have some games you feel like, okay, we're going to be favored in a few of these. So maybe the pressure is going to be taken off the staff and off these players a little bit. Maybe you don't want the pressure taken off, but regardless, it's not going to be the week-to-week gauntlet, although back-to-back years, the toughest schedule in all of college football. So I don't know what kind of break they get. They got to go a while till they get their bye week. So a lot of I think there's it's going to be a gauntlet, Mark. You know that. The SEC, we talk about it all the time. The SEC is just, it's unrivaled. It's ridiculous what they got to go through. They played Georgia last year. They got them again this year. It's going to be fascinating. Texas is one of their non-conference games. So, yeah.
I'm still astounded by these defensive numbers here. And I remember this from the end of last season, but during the offseason, it slipped my mind just in regards to Morgan and Poole only playing 9 games. So in a typical year, it's 12 games. If you make a bowl game, 13 games. They're going to rack up 140 or 50 tackles in a full season at 110 and 101. And then Jalen Catalon, as you mentioned, he brings the lumber, but he just doesn't lower the boom when he gets there. He gets there a lot. 99 tackles out of a safety with 3 picks, and Hudson Clark had 3 picks as well with 47 stops. So impressive. But at the same time, you see typically with most teams more of a distribution. So obviously those guys are crucial in regards to their health, because if they would lose some semblance of those 3 or 4 guys, ouch.
What did impress me was obviously, you know, we talked about their toughness. They did have guys kind of step up a little bit. They had they had a couple of other, like I said, Slusher stepped up. You know, you had you know, some okay moments there from guys that don't normally see the field a whole lot. But like you said, if they end up losing Catalan for any extended period of time, Bumper Pool, Grant Morgan, if you lose any of those three, all of a sudden you start to poke holes in their I don't know, their Razorback defense balloon. You start to poke holes. And that's the thing. They don't have the quality depth that I preach on my channel. They just don't. They don't have it at linebacker right now. They don't. And if I'm hoping this year these guys get through the year, obviously no injuries. I mean, you want that for their well-being anyways, but for the sake of the defense, they're going to have to be as close to 100% week in and week out as they could possibly be, or they're in some big trouble. You know, they have some other guys. They have some younger guys who could step up. But right now, yeah, there's a little bit of concern there if you lose any of those guys. And again, you combine that with their front four, their defensive line. I truly, Mark, I mean, after looking at the rest of the SEC, I think it's probably one of the worst defensive lines going into the year in the SEC. They're one of the bottom three. So you lose Morgan, you lose one of the other, Poole or Morgan, you're in some trouble.
So this is a defense that was 10th or worst in all the major categories across the board: rushing defense, pass defense, total defense, and scoring defense. What do you think is reasonable? What are your optimistic expectations for improvement?
Well, I do think, you know, their secondary, those numbers got a little bloated last year. They shut down Mississippi State and Ole Miss, who could throw the ball as good as anybody a year ago. Well, Mississippi State, I mean, we saw what happened as the year went on with them. But, I mean, they shut down Coral at Ole Miss. I mean, they picked that guy dry. I think that the ceiling is pretty high with the secondary. Bumper Poole, who is rated one of the highest Morgan. I think it was Grant Morgan. According to Pro Football Focus, they put out a analytic yesterday about the pass coverage from linebackers. He's like top 4 in the country. You know, so you're going to have a lot of assistance against the pass. I think to me, that's the expectation that their secondary is going to be far better than it was last year. And last year was a pretty decent step in the right direction. Now it's like, how far ahead are we compared to 2019? Maybe, like, how much better are they than, you know, Chad Morris's last year? We have to start seeing those significant steps. I think that's where the strength is going to be in the defense. The ground game, I don't know, Mark. Hog fans are going to have to hold their breath against the run. I don't know if Poole and Morgan, if they're not there making the stops, making the plays, if they're ever caught out of position, which is rare, but if they are, who knows what an opposing ground attack could do to this Razorback run defense. But, you know, they started off the year last year really strong in that department. A lot of that had to do with Jonathan Marshall. He's not on this team anymore, right? So yeah, my expectation, the height is pretty high for the secondary for their pass coverage, but I'm probably most concerned about what they're going to do against the run.
We're talking up the Hogs with Ty Hudson from Pig Trail Network. Please join him right there. And Ty actually has an announcement for us, don't you?
I do. Pretty excited, actually, Mark. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about it. Starting on August 30th this month, or later this month, the end of the month, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m., we're going to have an hour-long daily show. It's going to be on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I use the term daily loosely, but the goal is we're going to have those 3 live streams. I get a lot of, you know, my availability is just, it's been all over the place throughout the summer. And the goal is to have a place where everyone knows they can go to catch, you know, the Razorbacks, talking about the Hogs. Cause you know, sports radio around here, not the greatest, if I'm just being honest. And so I want to give fans something else, an alternative, and it's going to be on that YouTube, on the Pig Trail Network YouTube channel. Again, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, starting the week of Rice on August 30th. So pretty excited about that.
Nice. That should be a good time. Again, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, as you mentioned, right there on the banner, 11 a.m. Good stuff. Let's look at the offense. KJ Jefferson got his feet wet last year and the year before. 41 attempts, 3 touchdowns. is there reasonable expectation that we see a more mature and decisive KJ Jefferson, and what the improvement areas could be going into this fall versus what we saw last year?
So KJ, I had my eyes on him. Obviously, we saw what he did against Missouri. Pretty spectacular performance. And then I got to see him in 2 of the scrimmages. I got to watch their second scrimmage and then, of course, their red-white scrimmage. I was pretty impressed with that third scrimmage. I thought that offense just came out completely on fire. And I noticed this against Mizzou. It looked more and more like what Kendall Briles wanted to do. And he told the media, KJ Jefferson, told the media, they asked him, what's the advantage between you over Felipe Franks, obviously the Razorbacks starting quarterback a year ago, who transferred in from Florida, who's now in the NFL. And KJ said, I can run. So we're going to have more RPO. It's going to look more like the offense that Kendall Briles is trying to run at Arkansas. So I don't know, his passing abilities, his strengths are definitely the deep ball. I mean, his ability to throw the deep ball, again, Mizzou, in both the scrimmages that I've watched, every bit of footage you've had of KJ, you've got to go back and watch him throw the deep ball. He throws a pretty accurate he throws a pretty accurate deep ball, and I think that's going to be his strength. He does need to work on his pass completion percentage. I think he's hovering around 58%, 58, 57%. Those aren't great numbers. Some of those are drops from receivers. Okay, I get that, but I think that is an area he needs to work on a little bit, delivering a more catchable ball. But thankfully, he's going to have Treylon Burks and guys like that to throw to. But I think on the offensive side of the ball, the offensive line, you're talking about 4 returning starters. I mean, essentially, if they don't end up rotating guys in and out, which I think they're going to do, we're already kind of seeing some battles happening up and down. And of course, we had the most recent news of Ricky Stromberg, who has an MCL sprain, who's going to miss time up until, I think it sounds like he's going to be ready to go by Rice. I don't know if that means he's going to participate in practice that week or not. So that means they're going to move Ty Clary from right guard to center, and they're going to move Bo Limmer up to the starting right guard spot. Here's the thing, Mark. There was a time when Arkansas didn't know if they had enough room for threes up front on the offensive line. They didn't know they could go 3 deep at any one position on the offensive line, which you know what that means for the back end, and you know what that means for development and everything moving forward. They're so deep at every position. And I would even argue there's some quality depth up there. You've got Luke Jones at left guard, the possibility of Tykees Crawford, the transfer, who, he's kind of been all over the place, but ended up going to Charlotte and coming back to Arkansas, was previously committed to Arkansas. He's battling. I think he's going to end up battling for that right tackle spot over Dalton Wagner. You've got experience up front. So you have everything in place for Arkansas to be better. The biggest question mark, Mike Woods being gone, how much of an effect does that have on the offense? We know he's a fantastic deep route guy. You lost that. Now you've got Burks, who can do a little bit of everything, but who's behind him, right? That's the biggest question mark, along with KJ Jefferson. So everything's in place. Treylon Smith, I think, is one of the most underestimated running backs, or one of the most overlooked running backs in the SEC. And I'm not saying that as a Hog fan. I'm saying that as someone who's watched a lot of college football. This guy averaged north of right around 5 to 5.5 yards per carry, battling with Rakeem Boyd for carries last year. Didn't actually take over till the end of the year. Treylon Smith is pretty damn good. Behind him, there are question marks about who's up next. Sam Pittman I think he's alluded to that twice, about not having a second running back named. I think he's doing that. That's partly coach speak. I think really what's going on, we know the tight end spot. They move guys around. They just recently moved a running back of all positions to tight end. I think what's really going on here is there's a fight. There's a battle going on between 2 incoming freshmen, Raheem Sanders, 6'2", 225 pounds, and A.J. Green, both highly rated 4-star running backs or athletes out of high school. So A.J. Green, Raheem Sanders, I think there's a battle going on between the 2 of those guys. I'm going to tell you something, Mark. Whoever wins that 2 spot, I think, you're in good shape there. Those are 2 guys I think really highly of, along with some already pieces that were, or some already existing pieces that were already there a year ago, some existing parts to the offense in the backfield. TJ Hammonds and a couple other guys. You have a walk-on in Oglesby, who I don't really know much about. But, yeah, I think on the offensive side of things, they're headed in the right direction, but there's still some question marks. Receiver 2, put my hands where my camera. Receiver number 2, KJ Jefferson, and tight end. I think those are 3 areas right now are the biggest question marks for Arkansas on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, Green and Sanders were the second and third rated recruits in that 21 class. And if anyone's doing anything positive on offense, my guess is going to be there's a Treylon involved. That's going to be my initial evaluation of that. Burks with 51 catches, 7 touchdowns. Smith led the team in rushing. Again, broke that 5 yards per carry. And they're looking for the second guy, but they've got 2 prime 4 stars that are just arriving on campus. Figuratively, folks, they've been around for a while, but in regards to getting carries and the 2 freshmen coming into play. All right, I'm going to hit you up, Ty, with some numbers I see here in Athlons, and you tell me what they mean and if they translate to this upcoming season. So this is going back to 2020, of course. Arkansas made almost a 3-yard per attempt improvement per pass attempt from 2019 to 2020. That was the 3rd best mark in the nation in regards to improvement in the passing game, getting more chunk yardage per play.
Yeah, well, that was obviously thanks to, I think, Kendall Briles and Felipe Franks. I think that, the idea was that we're going to always play in front of the marker. I mean, it seemed like a lot of the goal was, first down or chunk of plays or chunk of yardage or bust. A lot of deep throws, a lot more bombs, a lot of fade and go routes down the field. Treylon Burks, Mike Woods really helped improve their offense. And I think too, they also averaged, I don't know if I hope I'm not spoiling anything, what you're trying to do here. I think they averaged like almost 55 yards more per game on offense. So it's very clear that Kendall Briles was the right guy for the job.
This next number, I think, is even more impressive considering that they played no out-of-conference opponents, that they did this in 2020 in comparison to 2019 when they didn't have the 4 non-conference opponents that are lesser opponents than what they face in conference. So in 2019, Arkansas, yards per play is one of the great indicators of how dominant a team is or is not, and directly relates to winning percentage. In yards per play, Arkansas was being outgained by its opponents by 1.33 yards per play in 2019. Now, in 2020, they were able to at least gain a little bit more yardage per play, about 0.1 yards per play than their opponents. So they made up almost 1.5 yards per play, and that's a credit to the offense and the defense. And again, I think that's even more impressive considering it was against 10 SEC opponents.
Yeah, and I didn't know that number. That's actually a really fascinating number. We saw the trick plays, right? You saw a lot of the end arounds and things like that. But I think you you're heading in the right direction there. You talked about the better defensive play. I think that played a role in what they were doing differently and getting more opportunities on offense because their takeaway ratio, Mark, I think they were, and I know this is actually focusing on the defense, but I think they were, 3rd or 2nd in the SEC in total takeaways. So it gave their offense more opportunities on the field. And so that's something we did not see under Chad Morris. That's not something we saw under Brett Bielema's last year at Arkansas. That's and they've got a lot of those guys that forced those turnovers back and all those guys that had a big part of why they were successful in offense back outside of Mike Woods and Felipe Franks.
This last statistic ties the pass per attempt on offense to the pass per attempt given up on defense. So once again, Arkansas passed for almost 3 more yards per attempt in 2020 than they did in 2019. Combine that with the defensive effort in giving up more than 1 yard less per pass attempt in 2020 versus 2019, and you have an improvement by the combined offensive and defensive efficiency of over 4 yards per pass attempt. That was tied with Maryland and Coastal Carolina for the best figure in the nation. And if it doesn't sound like a big deal to anybody that, oh, Arkansas only gave up 1.3 yards per less per pass attempt, big deal. It's a yard. 1.3, you're going to give up about somewhere in the range of 400 pass attempts in a season. You're talking about 600 yards over the course of a season. So combine the offense and the defense in the passing game in terms of explosiveness and efficiency, and they improve that much. Tied for best in the nation.
I think, again, I think it goes back to just the overall improvement that Odom put on defense and what he was able to do at the secondary. You look at their game planning from Mississippi State. He was like, yeah, we're going to rush 3, maybe 4, but primarily we're going to bring 3 and we're going to drop everybody else back in coverage. And so it really, I think it hit the morale of opposing quarterbacks. They either picked them off clean. They were really high the first, I want to say, 4 games of the year in total pass breakups and limiting yards after catch. I mean, you go down all these numbers. It's like, oh my gosh, what was Chad Morris doing for the last 2 years? What was Brett Bielema doing his last year as a head coach? And then on offense, again, I think it's the small things, but I think some of the play calling was obviously far improved compared to the last 3 years. But it just speaks to the just finally putting a better product on the field on both sides of the ball, without a doubt.
Ty Hudson getting the job done for us as he does each and every time on Arkansas football. Please check out his work at Big Trail Network. And again, one more time on the big news show coming up just prior to the Rice opener, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 11 a.m. Central Time. Ty, I know you're going to release, or I'm guessing I should make the assumption, but going to release some kind of a prediction at some point. So I'm not going to press you for that. But do you have a pretty good feel of where you're headed with that pick on Arkansas?
I do. Well, I mean, it's changed, I swear, like 4 times, but I feel like I'm pretty well dialed in. I'm going to release that win-loss ratio or the win-loss prediction on the 30th on that first show. And might surprise some, might upset a few, but, I don't BS, and I'm going to give my honest opinion, try to be as unbiased as humanly possible. I mean, that's kind of my job. That's what people want out of me, so that's what I'm going to give them. So yeah, I'll be releasing that on the 30th on that first show.
All right, Ty. It's always a good time, man. Appreciate
Absolutely.
you.
Thanks for having me on.